We are salt of the earth and light for the world. What does that look like? I'm reminded of the story of Daryl Davis. He is a man who, among many things, was very sure that the words to live by in response to darkness, the way to be salt of the earth. I think there's a quote that we could look at from him. People must stop focusing on the symptoms of hate. That's like putting a Band-Aid on cancer. I think Daryl Davis's story shows us how to be salt, how to be light, and how to move from moral outrage to moral courage. As a young boy, up until the age of 10, Daryl and his family moved all over the world, living in many different countries because his dad worked for the State Department as a Foreign Service officer. When he was 10, they moved back to Massachusetts, and he enjoyed joining the Cub Scouts. And one of the big thrills of his early career as a Cub Scout started out by being able to march in a parade, and he carried the American flag. And he was in no way prepared for having rocks, bottles, and soda cans thrown at him. The Cub Scout leaders immediately surrounded him, kept him safe, talked to him, as did his parents. But as he reflected on that experience later, he said, "My 10-year-old being was in no way prepared for this. I had to wonder, how could people who didn't even know me, never spoke to me, knew nothing about me, want to inflict pain on me just because of the color of my skin?" That morphed into a question that became Daryl's lifelong odyssey, his call, really, on earth. He's now in his mid-60s, and he continues to hold on to this question. And that is, how can you hate me if you don't even know me? He carried that question with him through college and his early career as a musician. One day he was playing in a bar in Maryland, and a white man came to him and asked him if he could buy him a drink. And as they sat down in between sets, the gentleman who had bought a drink for Daryl said, "You know, this is the first time I've ever done anything like this. I have never had a conversation with a black man." And then he paused, looked directly into Daryl's eyes, and said, "I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan." What Daryl heard was, this is my opportunity to answer that question. How can you hate me if you don't even know who I am? He felt it as a God-given opportunity to live into what he was called and created to do, to be salt, to be light. And so they sat and talked, and they continued to sit and talk. And in that course of that friendship and those conversations, the gentleman said, "I am ready to hand over my robes and my hood." In the decades since, Daryl has continued to meet with members of the KKK and other groups, and he has a collection of several, over a dozen, close to 24, hoods and robes. What he learned was taking time to listen, to build trust, to understand one another, was the way he was called to be light, to be salt in the world. It kind of goes against our modern sensibilities to sit and listen to someone who is so diametrically opposed in terms of beliefs and actions in the world. But it is the way to move from moral outrage to moral courage. We are called to not continue the division. One of the questions I've heard over and over again in the last couple of months from people I care about is, how can I continue in a relationship with people who see the world so differently, who vote so differently, who take stands so different? That's maybe the question that's the equivalent of Daryl's question, which was, how can you hate me if you don't even know me? To pay attention to that question and to be willing to be guided to an opportunity to listen,